Cobrapost. This is part of the Lootwallah series that we have started recently, 2 months back, about corporate malfeasance and corporate governance. So the format of this program will be that I will take you through findings and then show you a PowerPoint and then refer to the panelists about our findings. Today's story is investigation is about the Murugappa Group, or the Chola Investment and Finance CIFCL group, and their other sister concerns. And it is largely about related party transactions, which are prohibited by several acts of, several regulations, whether it is the SEBI regulation or the LODR regulation or IRDA or the Companies Act of 2013, etc., which about disclosures and liabilities of listed companies. And we found that there were more than 10,000 crores of related party transactions, and out of which only 2,000, nearly about 2,000 or slightly above that, had been disclosed or declared, and the rest had not been. And of course, apart from related party transactions, there's this whole thing that we found about cash deposits of Chola across 14 banking institutions, close to 25,000 crores, but our sources and our understanding is that that figure is on the low side, that figure is much, much more. And the cash relates to deposits done over 5-6 years, and it basically declares two things. One, that compliance, 2690 compliance wasn't done, our sources tell us, which is basically that anybody giving you an amount of rupees 20,000 or above, you have to file it with their PAN number and KYC with the income tax for the income tax to audit or make a tax assessment. So this was absolutely not done over several years. So we don't know who these depositors, so-called people are, who are depositing this cash with Chola. Chola claims today that these are 50 lakh truck operators. I fail to see how 50 lakh, to me this is quite a bogus explanation, that 50 lakh truck operators have deposited this cash across the country. So which means two things. One, that your credit worthiness of these people is suspect, because each one of you in this room has possibly taken a loan at one time or the other. And you all have a ECS mandate, you have a mandate, you have signed post-dated checks, etc., etc. You have a PAN number, you are there in CIBIL, you have a CIBIL score, etc. And how many times have you paid your installment or your EMI through cash? I guess none of you. At least I don't know of people who pay their installments in cash. So, but Chola claims that a lot of their credit comes back to them, repayment comes back to them in cash. So, which is very strange. It's a bit like a chit fund thing, that we don't know who these guys are, whether their PAN numbers are linked to Aadhaar or not. Of course, that is a separate sort of conversation. So it is a point for regulators to look into. The other point, of course, I'll take you through the slide. I'm just briefly regurgitating these points, is about related party transactions. It's not a small thing. NBFC has taken loans from banks. It has a lot of public money with itself, and the regulation is there to see that the public money is going for the end purpose for which it has been sought, in which case lending for vehicle loans or home loans. That is the purpose of the money that has come to the NBFC, and it is a public money, so it has to be treated with a lot of regulation. So if you are using this money to pay big salaries to your promoter individuals, big salaries to your sister concerns, and not declaring these transactions, it's a bit red herring about corporate governance, and it has happened to the tune of 10,000 crores. And I'll take you through the slideshow briefly, and then we'll come back and I'll take questions and I'll explain more. So here is this Murga. It's a 125-year-old conglomerate, and the fund diversion we are talking about is
of CIFCL, which is the flagship group of the NBFC. The 17 key companies in focus, some are financial entities, some are manufacturing, industrial, and other key entities, agriculture and trading. So we have divided this into several boxes. Investment and finance, this is the flagship. The shareholding pattern, promoters, FFI, DI, so basically promoters own nearly 51% or close to 50% of the shareholding. The debt mountain, they are not funded through equity placement, they are funded more by debts. So there's liability and there are borrowings till 2025. You can see 1,74,000 borrowings. Borrowings in 2019 alone were about 50,000. Where the money comes from, breaking down the 1.7 like about bank term loans, financial institutes, debentures, externals. So we have broken down the whole where the money comes from. Irregularity, Cholamandalam Primary Limited revealed, obviously the cash component which I just talked about, and fund diversion, which is undisclosed transactions of related party to family members, violating several of these regulations, as I briefly told you, including the accounting standard of 24. The magnitude of the cash deposits. The staggering volume of the cash deposit is all largely since 19, and it has gone, this is post, this is during, basically if you see, we are talking about India going digital, and this is during COVID, as a lot of these transactions, so basically cash transactions were nearly, had gone down during COVID, but their cash deposits are increasing. In the bank breakup I've given you, ICICI Bank at the maximum 13,000 crores, upwards of that. Then of course State Bank and then other banks, etc., etc. Cash collection. First of all, customer defaults, cash collected, deposited in bank accounts, field collection, time lag. So there are a lot of things that cash collection itself is a big red flag. Now I'm giving you a case study of a Axis Bank case study. Cash management, CMS, the primary what is involved, from Axis Bank itself, in 3 consecutive years, in 19 and 20, through about, little less than 300 transactions, 1,539 crore were deposited. The primary method involving peak so much in 1920 through 971 separate entries in the account. The breakup of the Axis Bank deposit. In 1920, you can see the amount 1,539 crores, and then 2021, 22, it's going down and other banks are taking over. I'm just showing. So nearly IndusInd Bank, again we have given you a breakup of how much money went to IndusInd Bank, total deposits. So basically what I'm trying to tell you is that this is, if I take it at face value, I mentioned points about ECS, direct debit, digital payments. So basically in a digital payment era, you are doing cash collections, and it shows that your credit quality is not good enough. And if your credit quality is not good enough, it's not reflecting in the annual reports of Chola. Nowhere have they said that the turnover is so huge in cash. And nowhere have they mentioned ever that these 50 lakh corporators give them the money to they return the money in loans. Nowhere have I at least read it in their annual reports or media reports. Nothing of that sort has come out. Then of course there's the income tax and KYC compliance that they have not done. Section 2690 of the income tax expressly says that anything above 20,000 rupees has to be declared with PAN number and name, etc. And this compliance, to the best of our knowledge, has not happened over several years for Chola. Non-performance assets, of course, if there are delays, if you are sort of defaulting on a loan and you're paying in cash, all this has to reflect in your balance sheet and credit worthiness of the. Then comes the credit rating agency complicity. We talked about ratings, and ratings is and auditors. Now, mentioned briefly,
if I am a rating agency and I am taking fees for ranking you or giving you rating A plus or whatever, whatever rating I am giving you, and my sister concern is taking professional fees, so there is a big conflict of interest. I'm not talking about the fees, I'm talking about this conflict of interest both with the rating agencies as well as auditors, where basically sister concerns of the rating agencies are taking in huge amounts of consultancy work, professional fees, and their other arm is doing their rating. Same thing with auditors. Your auditors are taking money for auditing the company and the sister concerns are taking professional fees. So is there a Chinese wall between the two, that the people who are doing the ranking or the auditing are not talking with the people who are doing professional consultancy for the group? And has the group declared in any way that this conflict of interest and have they addressed it? No. Multiple points of breakdown, as I said, the banking system, FIU, tax, rating agencies, auditors, RBI oversight about the banking violation. If taking in so much cash, what kind of regulatory oversight is the RBI doing on this huge cash deposits? The banks are supposed to report suspicious transactions. If so much cash is coming into the system, has the bank done the KYC of all the individual 50 lakh so-called truck operators who are putting in money in Chola? Cash collection, as I said, deposited without proper, it's a PMLA risk. If I don't know who has deposited this cash, it is a PMLA risk. Of course, unknown sources. Now let us come to the quantum of the diversion as related party transactions, more than 10,000 crores that I was talking about. This is a very interesting, the 3,040 crore insurance diversion. Let me just explain. Chola has a company, Chola General Insurance, which is 60% owned by Chola Holdings, which is a listed entity. And 40% the partner is Sumitomo of Japan. So what this company does without related party disclosures is that the premium it has earned, the earnings from the premium it has earned, it distributes 3,040 crores to 9 Chola Murugappa Group entities, 9 or whatever, listed and unlisted. So it distributes as work contracts, it distributes as professional fees, it distributes as commission, earnings to these. So this is at the cost of the minority shareholder, the Japanese Sumitomo, and also the shareholders of Chola Holdings, which is a listed company, which owns 60% of this company. So you have basically diverted nearly 30% of the earnings of this country, close to 3,040 crores, to these other entities. So I've explained all this here. Insurance commission, the amount, 30%, professional fees, concealed related party, work contract. This is how the money has gone to other related party concerns of, related party transactions of Chola to these other Murugappa Group companies without disclosures. So you have deceived the Japanese partner. It has international ramification, obviously, and it has this joint venture sort of structure. As a partner, Sumitomo was also entitled to these profits, but which would close as a 40% partner, which would be close to 1,200 crores. SPV is receiving insurance fund, Chola Business Services, and these are all other. Chola itself has earned a lot of insurance money by bundling sort of forced selling of insurance with their vehicle sales. Concealment only disclosure rate is 4%. So out of all this entire thing, they disclose only 116 crores out of 3,000. This entire insurance transactions, which Chola is now going and sort of thumping down. We have declared. I'm categorically saying that only 2,000 odd crores of it was declared as related party transactions, and in this particular instance, only about 116 crores out of this whole big amount. So there has been partial disclosure. We have combed through annual reports, we have combed through finance, and they are misrepresenting that they have declared these related party transactions. They have not declared it till 21, and after that there has been partial disclosures. The fund diversion, as I said, Cholamandalam, where all exactly the commission flow to the related parties from 17 to 25, we have mapped that out. So this presentation will also be on the website, so you need not worry, you will get this PowerPoint.
IDA violations, obviously. So IDA is it directly concerns IRDA. Insurance regulation is part of their related party. They are very strong on related party transactions. They have a whole code on that, and that is what is important to know. Of course, CIFCL's own insurance commission, as I said, recorded a growth rate of nearly 127%, but as insurance commission. Impact on the Japanese partner, which I've told you, holds 47%, but has got 0% of this particular 3,040 crores. Legal consequences. There are a lot of slides which talk about the legal consequences and the acts in question which they have violated. The Companies Act, the BNS section now 316/5, the SEBI loader regulations, failure to obtain audit committee and shareholder approval for a lot of these transactions, Indian accounting standards, etc. There's a whole box in our story about the accounting standards and how all this is related party transactions. I mean, it might look too dense to you, this whole related party business, but actually it is a SEBI is very strict about it. A lot of companies have been fined huge amounts of sum for related party transaction breaches, and for a listed entity to do that, it's not done. Explosive commission growth, as I said, cumulative premium, direct premium, this whole is mapped out. Unraveling the related party transactions further. We have detailed the names of the leadership circle, the promoter, the next generation, etc., etc. What constitutes fraud under Section 447 of the Companies Act? Fraud, wrongful gain, wrongful loss. Violations and criminal liability has been mapped out. This is all violations of the regulation and the Act. SEBI's loader regulations makes it mandatory disclosure requirements. Stock exchange disclosure there, periodic reporting has to be there, website publication, the annual reports have to suggest it. Annual report, SEBI is very particular from till last year, which you have to file in SEBI now since last year, but earlier you have to file in detail in your annual reports. SEBI's enforcement powers, and so we have gone about compounding, criminal, I mean, what exactly SEBI can do about this, the IRDA regulations, what IRDA can do, and the complete picture of the total diversion, like professional fees to related parties, 662 crores, Murugappa Management Services, 675 crores, work contracts, 1,654 crores, the diversion from Chola, 3,000 insurance, 3,040 crores, and of course, CBSL diversion, 4,103 crores. Professional fees to related parties, 662. Let's talk about this. Related, they are saying today, they mentioned briefly Chola, that Murugappa Management Services is no longer relevant to their, what did they say? They use something like strategic growth. Now, Murugappa Management, they received 663 crores over a period of time. And from 17 entities of Chola, Murugappa Group, out of which several were listed. And they got this money, and 359 crores of this money goes to paying salaries and professional fees of the promoters, of the promoter entities, individuals. They are receiving huge salaries in crores and crores from this, and there has been no disclosure about it. MMS is also paying ICRA. What business has this company which is not listed to pay ICRA, which is rating Chola Financial? So obviously this was done at a hand, because a listed entity is under too much scrutiny. So they devised this method that, okay, let us create this SPV, which is our sister concern, and let us do these things from a sister concern, so there may not be too much regulatory scrutiny on that. I mean, here briefly I'm mentioning the amount of salaries that Arun Algappan, chairman, 12.50, Velian and other family members. We are given the number of work. So basically in Murugappa, another thing that has happened is people who are non-executive directors in Chola listed companies are drawing salary through these companies, whether Murugappa Management Services or Chola Business Services, which will again come later. So basically, they are posing as an independent director in the board of Chola, but indirectly they are benefiting from here. So if they have been on various committees in Chola, what hat were they wearing? Were they wearing a non-executive hat, or were they wearing saying that we are taking no salary, but in the other company they are taking salaries? Work contracts as cover. So a lot of work contract recipients have been basically Pari Enterprises, other enterprises. Chola Business Services received 1,628 crores in a single year as a work contract in 18-19. The Chola Business Services is another. This is privately company used to divert more than 4,000 crores from Chola Financial. So what happens is Chola creates this, the sister concern, which is Chola Business Services. And Chola Business Services has a manpower contract with Chola Financial. And they get a huge amount of money. And they have on their roll thousands and thousands of people. We found at least 1,000 irregular workers' salary who are paid minimum, sort of little above minimum wage salary. First of all, what are these people doing? I mean, thousands and thousands of minimum wage. And why isn't Chola directly employing them? Why does it have to have a manpower contract? And they have claimed reductions under income tax 80 JJA, our sources tell us. So which is basically every year, if you have a 30% increase in employee base, you are entitled to certain deductions. And the total deductions which they have claimed are perhaps close to 180 crore. So which is a huge amount of money. And sometimes the workers are appearing in 1 year, they're disappearing, and they're again appearing after the third year. So basically, it is a systematic, what is it? And through this, they are also paying huge salaries to people. And also, they are using these so-called SPVs, these sister concerns, to pay big money to BCCI, IPL, religious foundations, which would have raised the eyebrows if it had gone through the listed entity. I mean, what business? Your purpose of raising loans and public money is to lend to people. Your purpose is not to take huge salaries through related party transactions. Your purpose is not to give donations disguised as work contracts. I mean, another thing they said in the morning was that no, it is normal these days to give CSR donation as work contracts. I mean, I have not heard about that. The 99% of the CSR donations goes as donation. They don't go as work contracts. So because you have to, as work contract means less scrutiny. Donation means you have to take approval from committees, from boards, and you have to say it is going, and you have to take a series of approvals internally. Work contract, and that you benefit from work contract because you can show it as an expense. Donation perhaps not. I mean, there's a qualifier there. The CBSL diversion, I have said. Here's the Chola ownership structure, where part of CBSL's money which they came, the salaries, then again Murugappa Management Services receives so much, Mysore Race Club gets 10 lakh. I mean, a lot of these bodies, a lot of these auto dealers, a lot of these bodies are receiving monies from indirectly from these two SPVs. I mean, basically transactions which perhaps would have got a lot of scrutiny if they had done from the listed company. The bogus employee scheme which I talked about, 180 crores in tax deductions under section 80 JJA of the income tax for hiring additional employees subsidiary to our CIFCL. No tax deduction at source for 3 years, salaries paid yearly. I mean, our sources told us, and our review of certain documents. Employees paid at minimum wage level, etc., etc. Hundreds of unrelated employees. Then there is Murugappa Management Services, which I talked about briefly. It's the money come through Murugappa Management Services from Coromandel International, CIFCL, EID Perry, Tube Investment. A lot of these are listed entities, and 13 other companies. I mean, from listed companies, money is coming to this private entity. Where is the money going? Top family beneficiaries: Ravi Chandran V, 55 crores over a period of time. Venkatachalam, 44 crores over a period of time. Murugan, 42.68. Murugappa Villian Subiya, NAM Arunachalam. Look at the amounts that these individuals are coming, and none of it declared, mind you. The HR heads, there's a certain HR head, he got 54 crores in salary between 17-18 and 21-22. Other key management personnel, KMP, which we call them. I've mentioned the various amounts that they have got.
pays to sport bodies, this being Madras Cricket Club, Chennai Super Kings, BCCI, etc. Total payment to the sporting organization about 3.59 crore. Rating agencies and auditors, let me briefly come back to this point. They were paid about 103 crores, but payment is not the issue here. It is conflict of interest. Payments to rating agencies, ICRA for instance got about 42 crores, including 73 lakhs in rent. Why is ICRA taking rent from India Ratings? 19.60 crores, 11 transactions. Then CRISIL, of course, we have mentioned the amount then. About 65 lakhs to sister concerns, which is conflict of interest. The ICRA. So CIFCL pays ICRA rent of about 68 lakhs in both 1920 and 2021. Why would a finance company pay rent to a rating agency? It's a question to be asked. The rating versus reality. So CRISIL's rating short-term A1 plus, long-term CRISIL AA plus stable. It suggests financial health and low credit risk. The reality debt to equity ratio is from 5.90 went up to 7.40. Large revenue and cash deposits. Of course, did they know about this? Did the rating agencies know about it? Did the auditors know about it? I don't know. Auditing firms, revolving door. So they have Deloitte coming in, then PwC Sundaram coming in, Balti Boy, Kare, etc. We have mapped all that out. Deloitte payments. Parent company serves as statutory auditor while a sister concern provides other services. Again, creating potential independence of conclave. So we are basically not questioning we are mentioning the huge amount of fees. The conflict of interest is what sort of bothers us in the rating agencies. And so that basically we want rating agencies and auditor agencies to be independent and not be bothered, and not be accused of conflict of interest. We don't want any conflict of interest to come in their work, which if their sister concerns are taking professional fees, then it raises doubts, and a listed company should not be doing this. So Balti Boy was again, which is also now Ernst & Young. We had given again now donations disguised as contracts. So you have mentioned Ishad, TN Tennis Association, Madras Canine Club, 16 other entities, Raipur Auto Dealers, etc., etc. Professional fees to Isha Foundations, nearly 9 crores. Questionable lending and missing charges. Now we have found that when a company, any company, private or public, lends to someone, it is supposed to file charges, which is to say that there's a lien, there's a particular charge. We found a whole batch of 30-40 companies which haven't filed charges. So we don't know the credit quality or why they haven't. Why are they hiding this fact that they are taking loans from? They have supposed to file charges. So it's a compliance thing, but it is there with a purpose. If the compliance is not done, it is not good. Charge register, as I said, companies that paid CIFCL in interest between 15-16, most failed to file mandatory charges with the MCA. So Section 77 of the Companies Act requires borrowers companies to register charge details with the registrar of companies within 30 days of loan creation. Multiple laws breach, of course, we have several sides, who is liable, penalty, violation, etc. Lower audit committee approvals are needed for a related party transaction. Shareholder approval is needed for related party transactions. Quarterly disclosures must be there. Only partial disclosures have been made and report on certain transactions. Again, as I said, I'm listing the violations of the new Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita, Section 316, 34, criminal breach of falsifying to cause wrongful gain, 197, creating etc., falsification of accounts, etc. IDA regulation, which I told you, forced selling is prohibited, and of course, related party disclosure. A full disclosure of related party transaction has to be there every quarter. Of course, how promoters profited while investors lost? My question is, promoters dividend. Promoters received dividend of about 648 crores over in 9 years, as against 10,000 crores which were in diversion and related party transactions. So which, if it had remained in the company, it would have sort of enhanced the company, it would have enhanced the earnings of other shareholders, etc., etc. So basically the shareholders other than the promoters lost out in these whole series of related party transactions. Of course, this is a disclaimer in the end. So I would now like to briefly go through our panelists. I would like to ask Hemendra ji to come and tell me what he thinks about this whole thing.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think what is very interesting.
Lights.
So I think what is very interesting about this particular expose is that the Murugappa Group is regarded as a very prestigious group. It is not known to have done any kind of major violations. In fact, it is one of the very few business groups in India where till date nobody had any major concerns of money being siphoned or any major irregularities being done. So what this expose has shown, it has raised definitely a lot of concerns that their spotlessly white shirt is no longer that white. And that is really a very major concern, because what Cobrapost has done is they have gone and dug in material which is normally not in the public domain. So the question arises that even those very few blue-blooded corporate business groups that we have, where everybody says are very well governed, this tells you that that may not be the case at all, and that everyone's white shirt is really a very dark grey. Now, another concern that this issue raises is that you're dealing with not just one company which is a financial company, but it is a business group. And that business group has manufacturing, it has service companies, it has insurance, and it has a non-bank financial company. Now, mind you, prior to bank nationalization, what was found is that when business groups had their own banks, what was found is that while these banks were raising monies from the public, it was by and large being deployed within that particular business group, and also there was a lot of misgovernance. So the issue was to have to separate banking from industrial houses. The reason being that while you're raising funds from the wide public, the benefits of that funding only goes to a very select few and only that particular business house. And that was the reason why industrial houses were not allowed into banking thereafter. But what we have found now in the last couple of years is that business house really need not have a bank. If they have a non-bank financial company, they can do many activities that a bank can do and yet deploy those funds for their benefit, divert it through all their myriad companies for their own gain or for any kind of wrongdoing. So the purpose of separating the industrial houses from the financial sector, which earlier consisted of banks, now that whole policy purpose has got defeated when you had industrial houses doing quasi-banking through their NBFCs. So the funds are coming into them through this indirect way, because the NBFCs in turn mainly raise their funds from banks. That means bank depositors' funds are now flowing into NBFCs, and then they get channelized into that particular industrial house. So it results in a very warped development, and that was what bank nationalization in 1969 was done to prevent. But we are now seeing a whole change in that, and because of that the NBFCs has come into the picture. Another thing, when you have these NBFCs, and what we have seen here is that the related party transactions, a lot of these, what Cobrapost has documented, has come through related party transactions. Now mind you, regulators are fully aware that it is through related party transactions that either promoters or executives siphon off money or they divert it through other purposes. And they have also implemented a lot of regulatory changes to monitor this. But what is interesting to note in this case is that the regulators have not caught this here. It is Cobrapost which has gone and done all this and through unpublished information. So in essence, despite the regulator tightening up on related party transactions, we are seeing these kind of transactions take place. And therefore, it is extremely important to monitor related party transactions. So, in essence, what it shows is that if small, and mind you, this is all being done when everything is kind of digitalized, so it's very easy to monitor. Now, while you are monitoring the small individual transactions, suppose you and I go to a bank and deposit say more than say 70, 80,000 rupees in cash, immediately the bank will ask for an explanation. It may be even tagged off to some, you'll get a query from the income tax department. But what we are finding is that when very large entities are doing it, nothing is raised. That only an independent outside party has to point it out, and then we have to see what, if ever, any investigation is done. So then what is the purpose of digitalizing this entire process if you're only going to monitor the small person's transactions while you're going to allow the larger entities to do these transactions? They are not going to be monitored. Now, this is something which has to be brought out in a democracy. And finally, what we are seeing is that no one, even in a company, when such transactions are done, especially a listed company, you have multiple internal processes. You will have that internal audit. You will have the external auditor. You will have their audit committee, and the audit committee consists of non-executive directors and independent directors. Now, if these transactions are happening and it is not raising an alarm bell, and the group has a very prestigious name, now you speak to a bankers also, they're very happy with dealing with the Murugappa companies, they regard them very highly. The credit rating also gives them, I think the top one they get, I think A1 plus rating. And by and large, there's no doubt that it is a financially very sound group. But when you see such transactions happening and nobody is raising any red flags, so then what is the point? Why are all the checks and balances failing when you've introduced so many structures and mechanisms actually to control this? Why does it need someone sitting totally on the outside to go and dig out all this? So what are all these checks and balances which are implemented and conceived exactly to stop this? Why are all these things happening? And most importantly, why is it happening in such a blue chip corporate business house? Because that to me is a great worry. And I think we need definitely external agencies to look into this, to look into the kind of details and the evidence that Cobrapost has done, and then they should bring it out, how much of this is relevant, how much of this is valid or not. I think this is what is extremely important, and now I'll hand it over to somebody on the other panel.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Okay.
So as my friend Hemendra just told you, there is a. I'll take Hemendra's argument और मैं इसको थोड़ा एक broader view आपको देता हूँ. The problem with our family-owned corporate groups is that that they are not transparent at all, and every like in the case of Cholamandalam, which Aniruddha just established, what these groups do is they have listed companies, and listed companies, they do real businesses, and then they have and these listed companies have balance sheets, consolidated balance sheet. इनकी accounts होती है, क्योंकि ये listed companies होती हैं, इनका under SEBI regulation, under company law regulation, they have to follow very strict rules of compliance and transparency, because there are millions of shareholders, people like us. आप हमारे ऐसे लोग म्यूचुअल फंड इन्वेस्ट करते हैं इन कंपनियों में, वो म्यूचुअल फंड इन कंपनी में पैसे डालता है, तो इस वजह से फॉर लिस्टेड एंटिटीज the compliance, there are rules, strict rules on compliance, disclosures, transparency. But what these family-owned groups do is, they're all very diversified groups. Cholamandalam is like the Birlas of the South. 125 साल पुरानी company है. They have interests in, as you can see, they are in engineering, they are in finance, NBFC, they are in agriculture, they are even in a semiconductor chip project, very modern in Gujarat. They have CG Power and Engineering Solutions. It's a big company. Tube Investments, EIT Paris. So in all these listed companies, they have their balance sheets, but along with that, what these family-owned groups do is, all of them. I'm not saying this. I think the last one that Aniruddha exposed was the Anil Ambani Group. वहाँ पे भी related party transactions की बड़ी problems थी. So how do these things happen? Is that these groups, along with the listed companies, they have hundreds of private entities which are below the radar, which do not reflect in the main balance sheet. और वो सारी companies, as Aniruddha he described them as SPVs. They are actually companies which are privately owned by the promoter and family and associates. Those are the companies through which money gets diverted, money gets moved, and the way money gets moved is not transparently disclosed. As Hemendra said, it fell upon Cobrapost to disclose what I call the undersea, the subterranean transactions, which don't reflect in the balance sheet. और ये systemic problem है. और आप ये पूछेंगे कि इंडियन कॉर्पोरेट ग्रुप्स में ये पहले भी ये इशू काफी उठा है, जो जहाँ पे एक एड्रेस में आपको 400 कंपनियां मिलेगी. इन वन पोस्ट बॉक्स, इन वन एड्रेस देयर आर 400 कंपनीज. यू मे आस्क व्हाट आर 400 कंपनीज डूइंग इन वन एड्रेस. These are all entities which are hidden entities owned by the promoter family through vast network of family members and associates, and a lot of these things happen through these hidden, unlisted entities which exist below the listed entities. So listed entities do all the business. The money earned gets, as he showed, the management advisory services, Cholamandalam managed business, that is owned by the family. Agar it is basic common sense. Conflict of interest is inherent in this. That if you are running a company, and if you want some consultancy, if you give that consultancy to another company owned by a family member. So it is a kind of related party. There is a problem here, because how do you do arm's length pricing? How do you know that you are not giving the family member who owns that entity much more than he deserves? If you people recall the Jet Airways case, अगर आप Google में जाएंगे, Jet Airways में सबसे बड़ा problem क्या था? All the profits of Jet Airways were being transferred to a consultancy company which was giving, sitting in London, which was giving, owned by one of the Jet Airways family members, which was giving all kinds of business services, and the money was going to them, and massive amounts were transferred. Now this is anti-shareholder. It is actually the shareholder doesn't even know, because the balance sheet is not reflecting it. So this is a problem with the Indian system. In the past, the company law there were several company law reform committees appointed to reform this. There was this famous Kumar Mangalam Birla committee, about I think 15 years ago. It came up with a recommendation that all the entities which sit under a corporate group, 200, 300, should not be allowed, and they should be reduced to just all the entities there shouldn't be more than 2 or 3 layers of subsidiary, like the holding company. Then under that there are a few companies, and below that few. So it was generally it was considered advisable that all the hundreds of companies that exist below these and which do not reflect in the main balance sheet should be done away with, and they should not be allowed. And if they are, then they should be part of the main. They should reflect all the activities should be in the main balance sheet, should be shown. But anyway, that never happened, and we continue to see corporate groups in India, family-owned groups. This is a family-owned group problem, by the way. So they all have dozens and dozens of companies which are hidden, whose activities are not known, which don't get reflected in the main balance sheet, which take money from listed companies, and as a result, sometimes these companies have, because of activities which are not, in many cases, more money went out of these main earning companies into other activities, and those activities, they kind of, those businesses collapsed. As a result, the main company also collapsed. There are many such instances. Z Group is one such instance, where the Z Entertainment was one, main company was Z Entertainment, and from there a lot of money went into other channels, and we all know what has happened. So this is a problem with the family-owned groups. The problem with the Ambanis, this has come out. Even the Adani Group has had related party problems, which SEBI was looking at. Any group you name, related party transactions has been a problem there.
I'm speaking after two people who are far more versed with economic and financial matters than I am. But clearly, just looking at the details of the investigation that has unfolded before us, I mean, there are straightforward large questions that occur. One is the amount of cash that is related. The second is related party transactions, which in simple language would be something questionable in any kind of dealing we would have had at individual levels. For example, if the evidence suggests that there are connections between rating agencies and of financial transactions, that's a wall that should never be breached. And certainly that would not be a wall that would be breached in the kind of transactions all of us individually deal in. The same question rises when we are dealing with accounting firms. If sister firms are directly dealing in financial transactions with a particular firm that is being accounted by a sister firm, that is again a wall that should not be breached, cannot be breached, because then that defeats the very purpose by which we look at transparency of financial operations. If ratings cannot be trusted, if accountancy cannot be trusted because there's an exchange of funds through other means, then we are already running into serious problems in terms of what we mean is reasonable operation of a corporate firm. The other important fact that I quite clearly see looking at this is that this is, as Hemendra and Venu have already mentioned, is a company with apparently a sterling reputation, which would lead me to suspect, and I think this is a question that opens up after, is that how prevalent are these kind of operations and questions and ways of operating in the industry at large, in corporates of similar sizes or similar operations. Just that scrutiny can reveal this in terms of journalists from outside looking in, and yet these operations can continue for years or decades without questions being raised, imposes serious questions about the level and nature of corporate governance in this country. The institutions that are supposed to be monitoring, the institutions that are supposed to have checks, the institutions that should have been asking these questions do not seem visible. And I say this only because we are today in an environment where we are actually living in a corporatocracy. We are well aware of the roles of the Adanis and Ambanis in this country today under the Modi government. We have seen over the past few years what has happened with electoral funds, what drives elections, how political parties operate. In this climate, I think what Aniruddha and Cobrapost have done in a series on Lootwallahs is, I think, pointing at the larger malaise that grips the entire environment, and each story, I think, has to be seen as part and example of what is unfolding right now. And I think this is one such great example. These questions need to be looked at and answered. They cannot be brushed away by press statements or headlines similarly across 8 media channels that 6% growth in shares after Cobrapost exposing. I mean, that itself to me raises bizarre questions. Which kind of investor jumps in to buy before assessing the nature of the investigations and what has unfolded? But I am just pointing out that there is a concerted attempt to kill, suppress, or ignore questions of corporate governance when firms are questioned and scrutinized.
नमस्कार। सारी बातें तो कह दी गई हैं, मैं हिंदी में ही आप लोगों से बात करूंगा। 2-3 चीज़ें बड़ी तकलीफ वाली हैं। एक तो ये कि जो काम कोबरापोस्ट कर रहा है वो बाकी के बिजनेस अखबार क्यों नहीं कर रहे हैं। वहाँ तो इन्वेस्टिगेटिव जर्नलिज्म ख़त्म ही हो गया। हमारे ख्याल से वहाँ कोई करता नहीं है, और उन अखबारों के बारे में अगर ये कहा जाए कि वो सारे के सारे पेड हैं, क्योंकि वहाँ इस तरीके की कोई खबर दिखाई नहीं पड़ती है। दूसरी चीज़, इस देश के अंदर जो रेगुलेटर्स हैं वो क्या कर रहे हैं? क्या वो आँख बंद करके सोए हुए हैं? क्या उनकी आँखों में पट्टी बंधी हुई है? क्या उनको टेबल के नीचे से कुछ चीज़ें जा रही हैं जिसकी वजह से वो इन सब चीज़ों को देखते नहीं हैं? मुझे नहीं लगता कि इन सब चीज़ों को कोई देख नहीं रहा होगा, निश्चित तौर पर देख रहा होगा। लेकिन जिस देश के अंदर एक बेचारा गरीब आदमी अगर वो एक रोटी चुरा ले या एक ब्रेड चुरा ले और उसको पीट पीट कर लोग उसकी हालत ख़राब कर देते हैं, उसकी लिंचिंग हो जाती है, वो बेचारा जेल चला जाता है, उसका परिवार तबाह हो जाता है, वहाँ इतने बड़े बड़े घोटाले हो रहे हैं और वो कंपनियाँ कर रही हैं जिनके बारे में लोग कभी सोचते भी नहीं थे। तो आप सोचिए कितना बड़ा ये खेल है अपने आप में। 25,000 करोड़ 6 साल के अंदर 14 बैंकों के अंदर डिपॉजिट हुआ, लेकिन किसका पैसा है इस बारे में जब पूछा गया तो पता चला 50 लाख ट्रक ऑपरेटर्स का है। अब ये 50 लाख ट्रक ऑपरेटर्स कौन है? आप पता करते रहिए आप। तो क्या रेगुलेटर की नज़र इस पर नहीं होनी चाहिए? क्या बुला के पूछना है कि भाई ये कहाँ से पैसा आया, कैश है तो किसका है, क्या कर रहे हैं आप? तो जो बुनियादी सवाल है कि बैंकिंग सिस्टम क्या कर रहा था, क्या उसको नहीं पूछना चाहिए था? क्या आरबीआई को इस बारे में नहीं जानकारी लेनी चाहिए थी? क्या टैक्स अथॉरिटीज़ की आंखें नहीं खुलनी चाहिए? क्या रेटिंग एजेंसीज को नहीं सोचना चाहिए इन चीज़ों के बारे में? लेकिन वो सोचते नहीं है। ऐसा नहीं कि सोचते नहीं है, 100% बिना उनकी मिली भगत के ये हो ही नहीं सकता। और इस देश में एक सबसे बड़ी समस्या ये हो गई है कि रेगुलेटर्स रेगुलेशन करना भूल गए हैं, क्योंकि वो शायद अपने राजनीतिक आकाओं की तरफ देखते हैं और उस कंपनी का पॉलिटिकल आकाओं के साथ क्या रिश्ता है ये भी बहुत कुछ निर्धारित करता है। और कुछ में पॉलिटिकल आकाओं की तरफ ना भी देखें तो भी इतनी मोटी मोटी रकम के ट्रांजैक्शंस होते हैं अंडर द टेबल कि करने की ज़रूरत ही नहीं पड़ती है। ये और एक बात और बहुत साफ है कि कॉरपोरेट गवर्नेंस, मुझे लगता है कि जो मॉडर्न इंडिया है, जहाँ इकोनॉमिक रिफॉर्म्स की बात की जाती है, हम दुनिया के 4th बिगेस्ट लार्जेस्ट इकोनॉमी की बात करते हैं, फास्टेस्ट ग्रोइंग इकोनॉमी की बात करते हैं, वहाँ पे क्या कॉरपोरेट गवर्नेंस के ऊपर बहुत तगड़ी नज़र रखने की ज़रूरत है या ज़रूरत नहीं है? आई थिंक ये फंडामेंटल क्वेश्चन। और जिस तरीके से कोबरापोस्ट ने पहले लूटवाला में, इसके ये दूसरा पार्ट है, इसी चीज़ को बार बार हाईलाइट हो रहा है कि हमारे यहाँ कॉरपोरेट गवर्नेंस है क्यों नहीं। क्या कारण है और जो रेगुलेटर्स का रोल है वो कहाँ है? अभी सबको मालूम है कि रेगुलेटर्स को लेके आजकल तो मामला सुप्रीम कोर्ट में भी जाता है और वहाँ कह दिया जाता है कि जो कानून के हिसाब से इसके बाद हम इन्वेस्टिगेशन नहीं कर सकते हैं क्योंकि कानूनन हमारे पर एक रोड ब्लॉक आके खड़ा हो गया है। ऐसे कानून क्यों बनाते हैं कि आप जो ऐसे लोगों को घोटाले करने की इजाज़त देते हैं या इस तरीके से चीज़ों को मैनेज करने की इजाज़त देते हैं? मुझे लगता है कि कॉर्पोरेट कोबरा पोस्ट को बधाई देनी चाहिए। कम से कम उन्होंने जो हमारे कॉर्पोरेट सेक्टर में जितने बड़े बड़े घोटाले गड़बड़ लूट हो रही है, कम से कम उसकी तरफ इन्होंने इशारा किया है। हम लोग तो अक्सर आजकल तो खैर थोड़ी सी जर्नलिज्म का ज़्यादा चर्चा करना बेहतर नहीं होगा क्योंकि जर्नलिज्म हो भी रहा है या नहीं हो रहा है अपने आप में एक सवाल है। लेकिन ज़रूर अनिरुद्ध ने जो कहा चाहा, एक बड़ी दिलचस्प बात यह है कि इन्होंने रात को इस कोबरा पोस्ट को ऑनलाइन डाला और उसके बाद कई ऐसे एनालिस्ट जिनका नाम मैं देखने की कोशिश करा तो उनका एनालिस्ट का नाम क्या है तो नाम मुझे दिखाई नहीं पड़ा। वो जस्टिफाई करने की कोशिश कर भाई 25,000 का जो है ना ये 12% ही तो पूरे उनका है, तो अब तो 20 से 40% तक नॉर्मल है, इसमें कौन सी बड़ी बात है? जस्ट सी द माइंड सेट। हु आर दीज एनालिस्ट हु आर ट्राइंग टू जस्टिफाई? आर दे इंडिपेंडेंट जर्नलिस्ट और दे आर कॉम्प्रोमाइज जर्नलिस्ट? Are they independent analysts? Are they compromised analysts? Why they are trying to justify it? Why they are not asking questions that this has to be investigated? The regulator has to be brought to the, has to be told about their responsibilities. Why regulators are sleeping over this? What is RBI doing? No, these questions are not asked. तो सीधे से कहें हाँ भाई 12% इसमें कौन सी बड़ी बात है, छोड़िए ना, इस पचड़े में आप क्यों पढ़ते हैं?
नहीं, पहले आज आपने सुना होगा कि चोला ने बोला कि पहले 50% होता था, 50% कैश होता था, अब तो करके 15% हो गया। मतलब वो खुद ही एंडोल हमारी स्टोरी की वो पुष्टि कर रहे हैं कि कैश पहले बहुत ज्यादा होता था अब कम है। कभी उनके बैलेंस शीट में एनुअल रिपोर्ट में कहीं नहीं आया है कैश का मेंशन, कहीं ये नहीं मेंशन आया कि 50 लाख ट्रक ऑपरेटर पहली बार ये फिगर आई है। मतलब जैसे चिट फंड ऑपरेटर के इन्वेस्टर्स होते थे कि भाई साहब इतने इतने लोग, लाखों लोग हैं, उन्होंने पैसा दिया, भाई ठीक है, हो सकता है वो ठीक हो सकता है वो बहुत है, लेकिन ये ऐसा कौन सा लोन लौटा रहे हैं लोग कि सिर्फ कैश में ही लोन लौटाते हैं? और आजकल यूपीआई के जमाना, चाय भी 5 रुपए में आपको यूपीआई से आप पे कर सकते हो, लेकिन लोन सिर्फ कैश में आएगा। ये बात जरा मतलब स्टमक नहीं होती है ठीक से, इसका कि क्या कारण हो सकता है। और जैसे मैंने बोला, उन्होंने खुद ही अपने बयानों से पुष्टि कर दी। रिलेटेड पार्टी ट्रांजैक्शंस का वो बोल रहे हैं। एक मुरुगप्पा मैनेजमेंट के बारे में उन्होंने बोला कि भाई साहब ये तो बंद हो गई है, 22 से हम इसको बहुत कम यूज कर रहे हैं। उसी मुरुगप्पा मैनेजमेंट में सारे प्रमोटर इंडिविजुअल्स को मोटी मोटी करोड़ों की तनख्वाहें गई हैं, ये कहीं डिस्क्लोज नहीं हुआ है। आप डिस्क्लोज करिए, एक नियम है डिस्क्लोज करने का, आप डिस्क्लोज करिए कि भैया ये रिलेटेड पार्टी, आप दीजिए तनख्वाह, कौन मना कर रहा है, लेकिन आप डिस्क्लोज तो करो, अपने बोर्ड से अप्रूवल लो, शेयर होल्डर से अप्रूवल लो और दो। आपने देखा होगा कि बाहर इलॉन मस्क अपने को वो लेना चाहता है कंपनसेशन, $1 ट्रिलियन या 500 स्टॉक कंपनसेशन लेना चाहता है। बोर्ड से लड़ाई होती है, ओपनली लड़ाई होती है। बोर्ड कभी कहता है हाँ ले लो, कभी कहता है नहीं ले लो, लेकिन ये बड़ा ट्रांसपेरेंट प्रोसेस है। उसमें वो एक अपना पक्ष रखते हैं, दूसरे लोग दूसरा पक्ष रखते हैं। यहाँ सब जैसे वेणु जी ने बोला कि भाई साहब ये सबटेरेनियन ट्रांजैक्शंस हो रहे हैं और लिस्टेड कंपनी ऊपर से एकदम बैठी हुई है, एकदम सफेद कपड़े पहन के, और सारा काम हो रहा है अगल बगल की कंपनियों में जो कि लिस्टेड नहीं है, उसके ऊपर कोई निगरानी नहीं है। और निगरानी एक कंपनी में किसकी होती है? ऑडिटर की होती है, रेटिंग एजेंसी की होती है निगरानी। तो वो निगरानी, तो अगर हम क्वेश्चन रेज करते हैं कि आपकी सिस्टर कंसर्न ने पैसा लिया, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट सिचुएशन है, उसको नजरअंदाज कर दो भाई। ये कौन से एनालिस्ट और पेपर जो आजकल लिख रहे हैं बड़े बड़े कमेंट्री, ये सब क्या, इसमें कोई बात नहीं है। ठीक है, फिर अगर आप कहते हो कि देश का कानून ये है, देश का रेगुलेशन ये है, रिलेटेड पार्टी डिस्क्लोजर का ये कानून है, कैश में डिपॉजिट करो तो 20,000 रुपए से ज्यादा डिपॉजिट करो तो पैन नंबर नाम के साथ आपको इनकम टैक्स में देना पड़ता है, ये आप नजरअंदाज कर दीजिए तो हम लोग सब बैठ जाए। भाई आपको देश के रेगुलेशन की मतलब कोई आप अब उसकी अवहेलना करने में आप कुछ समझते ही नहीं हो कि इन्हें नहीं तो होता है, आजकल धंधा नहीं ऐसे चलता है, ये सब करना पड़ता है। तो भाई ठीक है, फिर हम लोग भी बोरी बस्तर बंद करें जब लॉ का कोई मायने नहीं है, कुछ मायने नहीं है। भाई हम तहकीकात और इन्वेस्टिगेशन तो उसी चीज करेंगे ना कि ये कोई प्रोसेस का वायलेशन हुआ है, कोई लॉ का वायलेशन हुआ है। अगर वो लॉ का वायलेशन ऐसी झाड़ देंगे कि नहीं प्रेस रिलीज में, भाई साहब हमारे को प्रेस रिलीज का जवाब आया 3 पैरा का,
अब उसमें क्या किसी क्वेश्चन का जवाब नहीं आया डिटेल में, हमने तो पूरा डिटेल में सब क्वेश्चन पूछे थे, एकदम छोटा सा आ गया, ऊपर लांछन और लग गए कि आप कर रहे हो और मतलब एकदम से 24 घंटे में कर रहे हो, आप क्रिमिनल इंटेंट है आपका, फलाना है ढिमकाना है। भैया हमने आपको क्वेश्चनर भेजा, हमने बहुत मेहनत से स्टोरी करी, पहले स्टोरी हम पहले भी कर रहे थे लेकिन उस समय बिहार इलेक्शन का रिजल्ट आ गया, हमने पोस्टपोन करी, फिर बॉम्ब ब्लास्ट हो गया, फिर पोस्टपोन करी। तो एक प्रोडक्शन एक वो होता है, लेकिन स्टोरी करी, मेहनत से करी सब लोगों ने। आप उसको ऐसे ही आप क्वेश्चन का आंसर दिए बिना आंसर कर रहे हो आप सेबी को, जो भी बीएससी को, जो भी आप एक्सचेंज में आंसर कर रहे हो, तो उस आंसर से हम तो सेटिस्फाई ही नहीं है। क्या आंसर बोल रहा है? 50 लाख ट्रांसपोर्टर कौन है भैया? ये कौन है जो कैश में आपको देते हैं आजकल? क्या इसका मतलब ये भी है कि अगर वो धंधा कर रहे हैं तो धंधा में कैश पैदा कर रहे हैं और कैश से आपको दे रहे हैं, तो ये कैश इकोनॉमी कौन सी है भाई? जो कि ट्रांसपोर्टर भी धंधा पूरा कैश का है, ये भी धंधा पूरा कैश का है, और आप कंपनी बोल रहे हो इसमें क्या बात है? पहले तो 50% होता था, अब तो 15% में धंधा में कैश चलता है। भैया ठीक है, फिर चलता है तो चलता है भाई, हम कौन है बोलने वाले? हम बोलते हैं तो गलत हम ही बन जाए, मैसेंजर हम ही खराब है, गंदी गंदी चीजें बोलते हैं, बेवकूफी की चीजें बोलते हैं, इसका तो कोई मतलब नहीं है ना इस देश में। वी ओपन टू हाँ
एक और ये जो 50 लाख, पहली बात तो सवाल कोबरा पोस्ट ने पूछा, स्टोरी इन्होंने करी, और द आंसर इज बीइंग गिवन टू द नेशनल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज। नाउ दिस इज वेरी ऑड. They could have given the same reply to Cobrapost, which would have carried it as part of the story, right? But उन्होंने आप सवाल पूछेंगे कि भाई स्टॉक एक्सचेंज में जाके क्यों दिया? स्टॉक एक्सचेंज में इसलिए वो दे रहे हैं क्योंकि दे आर ओनली वरीड अबाउट द मूवमेंट ऑफ द स्टॉक प्राइसेस. They are not seriously really interested in replying to the media or clarifying to the media, so that people at large, general readers, can also understand what is going on. They go to straight away to the stock exchange because, as Hemendra said, that's also a kind of it's mandatory. They have to inform the stock exchange, and so that it's a requirement. So they are actually they're just responding to a requirement. It is not as if they are voluntarily giving answers or responses.
Feel responsible.
Yeah, exactly. They don't.
They should feel responsible.
responsible. So in that case, they should have sent Cobrapost the answers, right? कि ठीक है 50 लाख ट्रक ऑपरेटर से उन्होंने, और दूसरी बात आप सोचिएगा, आजकल आपने देखा होगा हर छोटा वर्कर भी या छोटा स्मॉल बिजनेस कमाने वाला भी यूपीआई यूज करता है. तो अब ये सवाल उठना चाहिए कि भाई ये लोग व्हाई आर दे नॉट यूजिंग डिजिटल system, why is such a cash payment being done on such a large scale? It's a question that commonsensically would come to everybody's mind, right? And the second, the answer to related parties that they've given is that they've all followed rules and necessary compliances. Now, should we take this as at face value, or should we wait for SEBI or some other relevant regulatory agencies to actually look at them and
if at all,
yeah, look at the claims and the documentation done by Cobrapost. I think we should wait for SEBI and other regulators to respond. We cannot at face value you can't sort of just accept whatever the group company is saying that, oh, everything is as per compliance. That's my limited point. Yeah. Also, one small, unrelated to Cobrapost investigation. As Hemendra said, this group has never been in any controversy. Now, I just want to share this little fact with you. The only big controversy that this group has been seriously involved, embroiled in, was about 4 or 5 years ago. One of the female members of the shareholders of the group, who is a nuclear scientist, her name is Valli Arunachalam, nuclear scientist in the US who has worked 40 years with a Fortune 500 company. He has many patents to her credit. She took the company, the family to court because on the ground that she was not given a board membership on the basis of her stake, 8% shares that she had. That's because this company is very patriarchal. It has never had a woman member of the family on the board. It does not admit women members on the board. If you see the history of the company, if you just Google the Murugappa Group, the book history, board members, you won't see a single woman. And of course, this generation of women have started protesting, taking them to court. Actually, this is an interesting aside. This is nothing to do with what you know.
I'll just add one more thing because it's coming out today, so it's worth mentioning. I think this is Ayush Tiwari's story in Scroll today, which I'll just read out the tweet itself. No chip experience, 125 crore donation, weeks after getting government approval for a semiconductor unit. Tamil Nadu's Murugappa Group gave its biggest ever donation to the BJP, 6 times more than its total in the last 10 years. Just be noted alongside.
Any questions?
And the investment in Gujarat, right?
That's the semiconductor.
Yeah, SMG.
मुरगप्पा और जो इनकी जो चोला कंपनी है इनके 29 कारोबार है जिसका मैंने रिसर्च किया हुआ है और उनमें से इनका 10 लिस्टेड है NSE और BSE। इनके शेयर कैसे बूम करते चले जा रहे हैं लगातार हाँ
इसका तो मैं कुछ बता नहीं पाऊंगा। मैं स्टॉक मार्केट वैसे भी नहीं समझता हूँ कुछ कि क्यों बढ़ता है नीचे आता है।
इतनी अनियमितताएं और सारी चीजें और तमाम मामलों का मॉनिटरिंग बॉडी जो है वो भी उनकी भी कहीं ना कहीं इतने बड़े अगर 25,000 करोड़ का एक्सेस हो रहा है कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं उसमें भी कोई मिली भगत को और इसको भी
भैया तो रेगुलेटर को देखना पड़ेगा, रेगुलेटर ने एग्जामिन करना है ये सब। उसमें हम तो कोई टिप्पणी नहीं दे सकते हैं कि स्टॉक क्यों बढ़ रहा है क्यों घट रहा है। अगर हम इस पे टिप्पणी दे देंगे तो स्टॉक बढ़ रहा है घटना उससे हमें इन्वेस्टिगेशन से कुछ लेना देना नहीं है। भैया स्टॉक ऊपर जाता है नीचे जाता है उसमें क्यों जा रहा है क्यों जा रहा है, लोगों को क्यों कॉन्फिडेंस आ रहा है चोला में, अभी तो आई डोंट नो।
अच्छा इनकी जो 10 कंपनियां लिस्टेड है इनमें कोई इसका वित्तीय चिंताएं आपको मिली हो जो और है?
भाई देखो जो लिस्टेड कंपनीज जो जैसे मुरगप्पा मैनेजमेंट है, लिस्टेड कंपनीज ने भी पैसा दिया मुरगप्पा मैनेजमेंट को और वहां से पैसा आया और फिर इधर इधर बटा, सब जगह सैलरीज मिली मोटी मोटी और इकरा को पैसा गया और फलाना डोनेशन हुआ। जो वो कह रहे हैं कि वर्क अभी आजकल CSR वो डोनेशन में नहीं बिलीव करते हैं, वो वर्क कंट्रैक्ट में बिलीव करते हैं। तो अब ये बड़ा अनोखी सा मेरे को प्रश्न आया है कि मतलब CSR तो हमने डोनेशन के रूप में ही सुना था, कभी वर्क कंट्रैक्ट। हैव यू एवर हर्ड ऑफ CSR इन वर्क कंट्रैक्ट?
No, I don't know. I'm not heard. By the way, this group generally has a good reputation, but on one occasion, 2015, there was an insider trading SEBI investigation against them, and I think they paid up the fines and they settled the matter.
I had a quick check on the shareholding pattern of Cholamandalam Investment Finance Company. That is the main pivot of this story. And I have found almost all the beneficiaries of this diversion in this company, and there are total around 67 members of the family among the shareholders, and there are 132 companies and trusts in this company who are body corporate shareholders. And now one question to Aniruddha and all the panelists. You are very learned people. I am just a commoner. मुझे तो लगता है जिस तरह से ये RPT का खेला हो रहा है, all these rules, regulations, laws, bylaws, laws are a sort of means to bury the corruption, the corporate corruption. What do you say about
it? I would totally agree with you because I have seen, and I've also been a critique of both the regulators, that because of so much misgovernance that has been going on in the corporate sector, and it has been found that it has been done through related party transactions, that they have definitely tightened it up. There's definitely more scrutiny. But like all things, especially in this country, the small player, when he does it, he becomes a thief. Yeah. When the big person does it, that person is a pillar of society. So that is what happens, and that is indeed most unfortunate. But they are tightening it up, and I think analysts and media are also closely now monitoring the related party transaction. And there is also pressure on the board to do so, as well as auditors. So everyone is aware. But as usual, we have seen when you're big, you get away with whatever you can do. It's the small person who gets targeted.
You know, your question is very valid, but we are also living in a regime where this government has favorites. So when the favorites commit violations, nothing happens. I mean, let's face it. I mean, this is very clear to us. And when people who when corporate groups who are not necessarily favored by this regime, on them the full force of law is applied. All the laws and regulations are there. It depends on whom it is applied with full force. Like I'll give you a simple example. The previous expose of Anil Ambani Group, it's an open fact that the related party problems in that company was in the public domain for 6 years, since 2017. Of course, Cobrapost brought in much more, but some of the basic aspects of related party was captured by their own auditors, and the auditors had resigned because of that, and they had submitted a report to the Company Affairs Department. It was lying with the Company Affairs Department for 6-7 years. But then something happened.
Bank of Baroda declared them a sort of the audit. Bank of Baroda audit was many years back.
Yeah. The Bank of Baroda had declared them. What is that? They declare defaulter. Yeah. No. Fraud. So banks first can declare you defaulter, or banks can declare you willful defaulter. Willful defaulter is fraud. Willful defaulter means criminal case. Now, these things had happened, but there was no movement. So, the real action came, as some people speculate, because of political reasons, I don't know. But for 5 years, nothing happened.
The entire scam is with the scheduled bank. It is not with the nationalized bank. So the government cannot take action because the scheduled banks are like
Bank of Baroda, not scheduled bank, nationalized bank.
I am talking the one which you have declared. Scheduled bank, Indus Bank and Axis Bank were previously a scheduled bank. So no action can be taken unless and until money laundering is done on the nationalized bank. And Indus Bank is a private bank owned by Aniruddha Group. And Axis Bank is also not a big bank. They were caught in the, this stock trading, and they lost a lot of money.
Axis Bank is a big bank, by the way. It's a big bank.
No, now it has become, but it was not a big bank. It was a small bank which created from the UTI people. They created it.
But here if you see, the bank deposits have come in private banks as well as nationalized banks. State Bank also got a lot of deposits.
No, but the government becomes bored. They can take action if you launder with the nationalized bank. But if you launder with the scheduled bank, then scheduled bank has to report to the reserve bank, and then the action is taken. This is a long process.
Sir, I'll
20,000 crore is a penny amount, but you have done an investigation. Hats off to you. There more people, 30 to 50,000 crore, and the money could be of some political parties, as it was in the case of Sahara, of people of other political parties. So these are, rotating. The political parties are rotating the cash flow in this formation where they cannot be challenged.
But those things, of course, those things have to be established. Yeah, you're right.
That has to be investigated.
एक क्वेश्चन है कि ये आपने जो किया है इससे भी बड़ा जो स्कैम है वो बिल्डर्स का है जो
80,000 आदमी पूरे इंडिया में उसके इन्वॉल्व है। बैंकों ने क्या क्या लोन दे दिया आपको फर्स्ट पार्टी, दूसरा जो बिल्डर है, तीसरा बैंक आकर उससे रिकवरी कर रहा है, उसका कोई लेना देना ही एग्रीमेंट हम तीनों में, चौथा बंदा आगे इतना बड़ा ये फ्रॉड है कोई साबित, क्योंकि बैंक ने अपने खाते में दिखा दिया कि इसने पेमेंट दिया ये वो हो चुका है, वहाँ 90% उन्होंने पेमेंट किया है, उसको वहाँ ट्रांसफर कर रहे हैं, इससे क्यों नहीं कर रहे हैं? मेन 80,000 आदमी इंडिया का उसमें ये हाउसिंग में फंसा हुआ है, क्योंकि देखिए उसमें गवर्नमेंट ने जब्त कर ली यूनिट एक्ट, अमर पाली अपना एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर बैठा दिया, किसी IAS रिटायर आदमी को 20 लाख रुपए महीने में बैठा दिया। वो क्या कर रहे हैं कि पैसा रिलीज ही क्या नहीं हो रहा, पैसा गया कहाँ, ईडी ने तो पकड़ लिया, सबने पकड़ लिया, कहाँ जा रहा है, इस पे करो आप। तो मेन मुद्दा इसका है 80,000 आदमी, जिसमें कम से कम भी 20,000 आदमी जो सीनियर सिटीजन से भी ज्यादा हो।
Sure. Thank you, Lord. We'll certainly look at it. I'm sure Hartosh ji and others will also look at it. Thanks a lot. Thank you for coming. And if you have any... Thank you.
Salim ji,